Jet planes in the night sky with you, getting high in the sunrise with you, getting through all the bad times with you. I wasn't missing a thing, no I do. And I wish that I could build a time machine, 'cause time moves on, and now you're gone. Oh, if only I could build a time machine, I'd come and get you. I can't forget you. I miss you, I miss you, I miss you all the time. I wish that, I wish that, I wish that you were mine. I miss you, I miss you, I miss you all the time. I wish that, I wish that, I wish that you were mine.
What's up, everybody? It is Thursday, December the 19th, 2019, and this is the Kingsman Report live podcast. It's the news everyone ignores. I have a whole bunch of news articles tonight that I'm going to get into, and one has to do with your thumbnail there. It says, "Thus always to tyrants," which is the motto on the bottom of the Virginia's seal. So I'm going to talk about what's going on there, obviously, and then I'm going to talk about a lot of other articles that I have. 3 shootings, one yesterday Texas, one today in Rhode Island, one in Russia. It looks as if some of the surveillance footage from Epstein's first suicide attempt has gone missing. The NSA can also spy on you, or anyone for that matter, without a warrant now. So I'm going to talk about all this stuff and a whole bunch more, so stay tuned. If it's your first time watching this, then you can call in. It is live. It's a live call-in stream and podcast. The number is 1408-638-0968, and then you'll enter the meeting ID. It's 534-233-4758, and you can send articles or videos to kingsmanreport2019@gmail.com. So sit back, enjoy some fluoridated water, and I will be right back.
Jet planes in the night sky with you, getting high in the sunrise with you.
All right. So some of the articles, all the articles, all the links to all these articles are in the description below. Some of these articles I will read in their entirety. Some of them I will just kind of skim over. A lot of the shooting articles and stuff, I don't like to, give a lot of recognition to this type of stuff. Just because, I said this and other guys say this all the time, that this stuff is going to become more mainstream, more predominant in our news and in our world. It's just, the reality we live in now. So I'm not trying to glorify any of this, but there was 4 wounded and at a Texas mall shooting. If you guys want to look into that, like I said, the link is in the description below. This happened last night. So there was 3 heard in active shooting situation in Westerly, Rhode Island. So this hasn't been updated, or this isn't the updated article. From what I understand from seeing someone that's actually from this town in Rhode Island, they said that it was, well, he actually knew the person's mother, or he knew the person. It was her mother who was killed, and I think the person also killed himself. So there was that shooting, and then we have a deadly shooting at Moscow security headquarters. This is kind of just branching out everywhere right now. So I'll go into this one. It says at least 1 person has been killed and 1 wounded in a shooting at the headquarters of Russia's Federal Security Service in central Moscow, Russian media say. The gunman who opened fire with an automatic weapon in the lobby of the building was killed by armed police, and security forces have cordoned off the area and moved bystanders into a nearby building during the operation. The shooting came hours after President Putin's annual press conference, and details are not yet clear, but several reports in Moscow media said 3 officers had been killed, and the attacker was said to have opened fire with a Kalashnikov, which is, one of the weapons they're trying to ban here in this country for civilians. So if you want to read more into this article, like I said, the link's in the description. If you want to share any articles with me, you can always send them via email. Fastest way to get them to me during the live stream is through Google Hangouts at kingsmanreport2019@gmail.com. Or you can call in live at 1408-638-0968 and then enter the meeting ID 534-233-4758, and I also monitor those phone calls as well. I'll screen those once I get to that, and we start to have people that will call in. So this is interesting. So we already know that when he killed himself or whatever happened, I guess hung himself with tissue paper or whatever, apparently there was a brownout, so the cameras weren't working, the electricity got shut off to the prison. There's a whole bunch of just crazy stuff that happened around this whole situation here. Well, now they're saying that the prison surveillance footage from the first attempt has gone missing. So, looks to me like there's a cover-up afoot. It says surveillance footage outside Jeffrey Epstein's cell at the Metropolitan Correction Center during his first attempted suicide has gone missing, the New York Daily News reported. Epstein, who was facing sex trafficking and conspiracy charges, first attempted to take his own life at the end of July. While in a cell he shared with this fellow named Nick, a former police officer who is charged with the murder of 4 men. Epstein was put on suicide watch, but soon after the convicted sex offender was taken off the heightened surveillance, he died by suicide on August 10th. It says the footage could be used by the defense as evidence of his cellmate's good character for allegedly trying to save Epstein's life, and he could face a death penalty if he's found guilty. So, if you guys want to read more into this, but there's just so much weird stuff surrounding this entire thing. If he's even dead at all. So this article came out. It says a Federal Reserve network issues caused nationwide direct deposit outage. So we all know about all the ransomware attacks that have been happening all over the country. New Orleans, Pensacola, Florida, right after the attack there. It's going crazy. And all of this is part of something I'm going to show you here shortly. But it's this whole agenda that's happening. So, and it's taking place right in front of our eyes. Nobody's paying attention to it here, really. So many of us are over here like firing warning flares and nobody's listening. So the article says, in recent years, banks and credit card processors had blamed hackers, blackouts, infrastructure inefficiencies, and of course Russians for periodic service outages. As of today, they are now blaming the Fed itself. Starting around 7 a.m., there was a surge of outages reported at Capital One, with the down detector noting that while focused on the Northeast, the outages was nationwide. So what happened? According to Capital One, network issues at the Federal Reserve were causing certain banking transactions to be delayed, and we're monitoring the situation closely in partnership with the Fed, Capital One said in a tweet. The Federal Reserve is experiencing network issues causing certain transactions to be delayed, and we're monitoring the situation closely in partnership with the Fed. As soon as they are resolved the issue, we'll work to make sure all transactions are posted as quickly as possible. Capital One says it'll make sure transactions are posted as soon as possible, as soon as the Fed issues are resolved. So if you guys want to go and read all the tweets, but this is part of the cyber attack agenda that's happening. Oops. And you can see it down here on the bottom of this. Right here. And if you want to know what this is also in the link is also in the description, and it has to do with this highlighted area right here. So, and this is from their annual meeting. So all of this stuff is happening. So you have a stable and strategic order, and then you have this right here. This is basically Agenda 21, reworded, number 3. And then you have these two countries who are dominating the news right now. 4 and 5 there. And you're having these happen all over the country. Everywhere. And not to mention number 9. This has been happening. Number 9 is not anything new. That's been happening. And then also, because I read stuff on space, on cyber threats, on data breaches, on scams that are going on. I read on pretty much everything that has to do with our current events. Pretty much all of this stuff is happening right now. All of it. So the link to this is in the description. If you guys want to read more on who this group is, I suggest researching this, but this is basically made up of a group of elites who decide the world's fate. So you should definitely go do some research on who these people are. And then you'll realize that all the world's a stage and you're just playing a part. Alright, so it says skyrocketing costs will pop all the bubbles. The reckoning is coming, and everyone who counted on eternal growth of borrowing to stave off the reckoning is in for a big surprise. As we've used a simple trick to keep the status quo from imploding for the past 11 years. Borrow whatever it takes to keep paying the skyrocketing costs for housing, healthcare, college, childcare, government, permanent wars, and so on. The trick has worked because central banks pushed interest rates to zero, lowering the cost of borrowing more as costs continue spiraling higher. But that trick has been used up. The next step, negative interest rates, has failed to spark, quote, growth required to pay for insanely overpriced housing, healthcare, college, childcare, government, etc. We've reached the end of the line on lowering interest rates as a way of borrowing more to keep our heads above water. We've reached the point where households and enterprises can't even afford the principal payments, i.e. no interest at all. How are the banks supposed to make money at zero interest rates? By charging outrageous overdraft fees and offering marginally qualified borrowers sky-high credit cards and getting in on the federally guaranteed mortgage student loan racket. That's how. The point here is the discipline of rising cost has been destroyed by easy money. Take higher education as an example. If there was no federally backed student loan industry, universities would have been forced to innovate 20 years ago to lower costs and improve the market value of their product. Instead, their bloated cost structure untouched as it spiraled even higher, and simply pass the higher cost on to students. We have had to borrow over $1.5 trillion to feed the bloated higher education cartel. Borrowing more money to avoid dealing with soaring costs doesn't solve the problem, it adds another problem. With the discipline of living within one's means destroyed, there's no pressure to innovate or make necessary sacrifices. The status quo becomes complacency, bloated, lazy, sclerotic, unwilling to change anything fundamental, and incapable of making the tiniest sacrifices. Why sacrifice when we can always pass a higher cost to somebody who can always borrow more? Even at zero rates, borrowing more runs into a brick wall. Even at zero interest, the principal and other costs of buying and maintaining vehicles, homes, etc. with borrowed money eventually exceeds income, and the borrowers default in a mass. Nobody cares where the taxpayers, renters, buyers, or customers get the money. For 26 glorious years, they've somehow come up with the cash to pay the rent that tripled, the healthcare insurance that tripled, the property tax that tripled, the college tuition that tripled, and so on. Meanwhile, back in reality, wages have not tripled. They're barely budged for the bottom 90%, and so the widening gap between income, the ability to pay in cash, and borrowing more to pay on credit has widened to the breaking point. Here's a little chart here. It says wages aren't keeping up. Cost of family health insurance has been growing faster than inflation for years, making it harder for workers to win pay raises. Companies still pay roughly 70% of the price tag, but employees are paying much more in deductibles and their share of covered costs, known as co-insurance. Cumulative growth in select metrics 2006 to 2016. There's some charts here. As the most experienced operators are closing shop. As this article notes, the most experienced restaurants in Seattle are closing the doors. Seattle's wage mandate kills restaurants. I often hear people in Seattle lament that it's becoming more corporate. The truth is that the city has made it nearly impossible for many small businesses to survive. It's happening everywhere, even locally here where I'm at. If you want to read more on this article, I'm kind of going through this stuff fast, and I'm not reading all the way through them because I have a rather long article here towards the end. Like this one, I'm not going to read all this. So this is Unmasking the Secret Landlords Buying Up U.S. Properties. What is going on? And by the way, everybody, I've seen the Twitter feeds. Yes, Trump got impeached. But guess what? Yes, Trump is still your president. All you morons with blue check marks on your Twitter accounts that are going around saying he's not our president, we don't have to listen to him or whatever, you guys are idiots. He's still your president. So, get over it. Just ridiculous. I don't understand how some of you guys have degrees and intelligence, but you lack common sense. I mean, no, it still has to go to the Senate where the Republicans, his party, runs the Senate. It's going to get shot down. So it says America's cities are being bought up bit by bit by anonymous shell companies using piles of cash. Modest single-family homes owned for generations by families are now held by corporate vehicles with names that appear to be little more than jumbles of letters and punctuation, such as SC Tusca LLC and CNS 1975 LLC, registered to law offices and post offices miles away. New glittering towers filled with owned but empty condos look down over our cities as residents below struggle to find any available housing. All cash transactions have come to account for a quarter of all residential real estate purchases, totaling hundreds of billions of dollars nationwide. Financial Crimes Enforcement Network, the Financial Crimes Unit of the Federal Treasury Department, also known as FinCEN or FINCEN, noted in 2017 news release. Thanks to the Bank Secrecy Act of 1970 anti-money laundering law, the agency is able to learn who owns many of these properties. In high-cost cities such as New York, San Francisco, Los Angeles, and Miami, it's flagged over 30% of cash purchases as suspicious transactions. But FinCEN also cites this bill to hide this information from the public, leaving the American people increasingly in the dark about who owns their cities. For journalists, it requires undertaking a tremendous investigative effort to find the real owner of even one property, let alone millions. So, let's skip that part. It says the Census Bureau reports that nearly 3 million U.S. homes and 13 million apartment units are owned by LLC, LLP, LP, or shell companies, levels of anonymous ownership not seen in American history. The proportion of residential rental properties owned by individuals and families has fallen from 92% in 1991 to 74% in 2015. Lack of transparency not only represents an opportunity for money laundering, but it also has more prosaic implications. First-time homebuyers are denied the opportunity to buy affordable homes with bank loans because those properties already have been scooped up by shell companies. Tenants can't figure out to whom to complain when something goes wrong. Local officials don't know whom to hold responsible for code violations and neighborhood blight. With anonymity comes impunity, and the vulnerable tenant skyrocketing numbers of evictions. It wasn't until reporters from The Guardian and The Washington Post began to investigate. For example, residents living in hundreds of properties across the South learned that they shared a secret landlord, hiding behind names such as SPMK, XGA LLC. Fox News personality Sean Hannity. If you guys want to look more into this article, links in the description. This I found interesting. So AI is helping to basically develop sprayable solar cells for things such as solar power. So getting more, has to do with two things. Well, mainly one thing I'll talk about is artificial intelligence, how it's pretty much taking over everything. And this article says solar power is enormously promising when it comes to providing a source of sustainable energy, but solar panels take up a lot of space, which can limit their appeal and practicality. Enormous solar farms stretching as far as the eye can see might be an option in rural locations where space is readily available. However, go into a city, and the number of places you might be able to deploy photovoltaics drastically decreases unless robots have anything to say about it, that is. At the University of Central Florida, researchers have been using machine learning to optimize the materials used to make special solar cells. Their goal is to develop the insights that will make spray-on solar cells, which are applicable just about anywhere, a reality. Such sprayable cells could be used to paint anything from bridges to skyscrapers, and it would then capture light and turn it into energy for the electrical grid. We use artificial intelligence to develop the material compositions to make a comparatively new type of solar cells called perovskite solar cells, I guess. Dr. J.N. Thomas, an associate professor at the university's Nanoscience Technology Center, told Digital Trends. Unlike the currently available commercial silicone solar cells, these devices are much thinner and the materials can be deposited from solutions. Making the solar cells from a solution enables the use of techniques like roll-to-roll or spray coating to make large area devices very, very rapidly. This considerably reduces the cost of production. In Thomas' words, the materials to make these kind of solar cells are dirt cheap, but the downside is that they are also toxic and have inferior environmental stability. Researchers hope that by using artificial intelligence, they can develop better, safer, higher quality perovskite solar cells. To that end, the fed solar cell performance data from more than 2,000 scientific publications into a machine learning neural network. The system was able to analyze this information to better predict which perovskites recipe would work. Based on these results, we synthesized new solar cells, material composites, and measured their properties to test the validity of the model, Thomas said. They found that to measure the properties matched very well with the predicted values. While the researchers have yet to develop their own sprayable solar cells, they've had to lay out important research that others can now use to develop their own materials. Those other researchers had better hurry, though. Our next goal is to make new material compositions that can make highly stable solution processable solar cells based on our predictions, Thomas said. Our intention is to make highly flexible solar cells by spray coating techniques. Very interesting, but this is, I think all this stuff is going to be, all this technology is going to be used in the future whenever they try to, roll out the sustainable energy that's part of Agenda 2030 to make the environment a lot safer. But, they're also not telling you how bad they're having to tear up the earth to get some of the stuff they use to make these materials. Man, I got a headache. So, this has a little information about technology and also, your vaccinations. Or inoculations, whatever you want to call them. Visible ink could soon reveal whether children have been vaccinated. Have you ever lost track of whether or not your child was vaccinated for any one of the diseases current vaccines are supposed to prevent the spread of? Science has something for you. Thanks to researchers at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, vaccine data can now be embedded directly into human skin as reported by Scientific American. What more could you want? Maintaining accurate vaccination records is a challenge around the world, especially in the developing world due to lost paperwork, communication and clerical errors, or simply forgetting, or all the data breaches. In fact, Smithsonian Magazine reports that inconsistent record keeping is thought to play a large role in the 1.5 million deaths each year. Mark Pronsnitz, a bioengineering professor at Georgia Institute of Technology, not involved in the study, explained. Especially in developing countries where medical records may not be as complete or accessible, there can be a value in having medical information directly associated with a person. Nancy Koss, a Johns Hopkins University bioethics ethicist who wasn't involved in the MIT study, said, "Figuring out how to keep better track of vaccination is incredibly important from a health system and a public health perspective. The researchers used a dye that is invisible to the naked eye, but can be seen with, wait for it, mobile phone camera filter. Much like a QR code, the dye would be injected into a child's skin via microneedles at the time of vaccination and would last up to 5 years. So kind of a temporary tattoo. The new system is still in the early stages of development and has not been tested on actual children, but it has successfully been used on both pig and rat skin as well as human skin in a dish. According to MIT bioengineer Anna Jacklintz, the biggest challenge the researchers faced was finding a safe and long-lasting dye. After testing various dyes and finding none that held up for being exposed to sunlight, the research team settled on quantum dots. The tiny semiconducting crystals were first used by researchers to label cells and has been, quote, shown to be safe in humans, according to Scientific American. Rosnitz also highlighted that a system like this must be discreet and the patient or the patient's family must agree with the method. He believes this new system is a pretty interesting way to accomplish those goals, but that some patients may have privacy concerns when it came to, quote, carrying around personal medical information on their bodies. Well, they want to put it in the chip that's going to go in your hand, so you're going to have all your personal data put into a chip. Different people in different cultures will probably feel differently about having an invisible medical tattoo. Class also pointed out that the system of record keeping could, quote, be ripe for misinterpretations and rumors, especially in developing countries with a history of having been taken advantage of by Western medical powers. But it turns out privacy was actually a concern of the MIT researchers. They aimed to avoid technology that would potentially cross the line into an invasion of privacy, such as iris scans or databases with personal information that would render patients unidentifiable. Though it doesn't take much imagination to see where vaccine data embedded into your skin via scannable dye may lead, perhaps someday we'll see infrared light scans at entrances to schools, buildings, or as part of the TSA privacy invasion process when we travel. Now, I've read articles on this face scans right here. But our government kind of stepped away from doing any of the facial recognition software when citizens of our country go in and out of TSA. They kind of backed off from that. I read an article on that. It's in a prior video. It's called They're Watching You. But there are convenience stores happening more or less on the East and West Coast, more, cities dominated by high populations. We don't really have this kind of technology down here in the South, Midwest. But eventually everywhere it's going to have it. Some of these stores you can't even get into without a face scan. So, alternately, Rich Nagar, a student at Harvard Medical School, is hoping to create a different system for tracking medical information such as vaccination records, and the system involves wearing a necklace that uses the same technology as radio frequency identification or RFID chips. Information such as pregnancy history, growth charts, and vaccination records would be encrypted and password protected. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation funded the MIT research after a direct request from Bill Gates for such technology, and it was published Wednesday in Scientific Translational Medicine. So I couldn't think of the name yesterday whenever I went on that little tirade. It's the ID 2020 Alliance. And I did a video on that also. But what you have to understand, Microsoft is part of the ID 2020 Alliance, and its implementation in the Austin, Texas area where they're testing this out on the homeless population, or offering it to the homeless population as convenience, and saying that they can put whether it's disability, their Medicaid, Medicare card information in this chip, their disability in the chip, or their retirement or pension or whatever it may be. They're trying in their identity also, putting it in this chip. And the people involved in the ID 2020 Alliance is Microsoft as far as the technology portion goes, Gavi, which is Big Pharma, the Rockefeller Foundation, which is the bank basically for it. And they're dominating this more and more. So to see him involved in this, it's not surprising to me because of the company that he used to run. I think he's retired from it now, doing this stuff. So I'm gonna play this video for you guys. Doesn't look like there's any sound, but you can see there where they're using a filter to kind of scan the fake skin there, or whatever's in that dish. Not gonna watch all this, but so they kind of press it on there like that for 5 minutes. Yeah, pull it off. And then I guess they're going to use the filter there it looks like a piece of meat or fat or something. If you listen to the podcast, then the link's in the description of the podcast as well. I'm kind of trying to explain it for the people who listen to this in podcast form. And then they take a cell phone and use a filter on a cell phone, and you can see how it reacts to where they can see the marking on there. So, this is in the end, the researchers just want people to be comfortable, says study author and Rice University bioengineer Kevin McHugh. So, like I said, if you guys want to look at that article, it's in the description below. So, Jar Jar Binks said, which is in the chat right now, that are you upset we're going to take your guns? I got news for you. Oklahoma, we have a Second Amendment governor. You're not going to take our firearms here. Sorry. I wouldn't try it either. So no, I'm not upset, but you can try it. It's not going to fly here. We have constitutional carry in our state, meaning we can walk around with guns on our hips, because some of your little presidential candidates like Cory Booker and some of the Democratic raised liberals in the state here where I'm at, they try to come down here and cause a fuss about it. And guess what? It didn't fly with them either. So it got voted in, and it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen here. So you guys aren't getting the guns. No, but I will say this. I don't want to see anybody get hurt in Virginia, either side. But you guys need to respect people's constitutional rights, because at the end of the day, it's going to be the people with firearms that end up winning. So no, Jar Jar Binks, I'm not upset. It's going to start with Virginia. And watch what happens. Watch what happens. Remember what happened whenever the feds try to take the land from the Bundys? Yeah, some of those guys got killed. But just keep in mind how many militia members showed up over there. There's more of us than there are of you. The funny thing about it is that we don't go around and boast and brag about our intention. We kind of just sit back and wait for it to pop off, and when it does, then you'll see what a well-regulated militia looks like. It's going to shock you. So, NSA allowed to unmask U.S. citizens without surveillance warrant. U.S. court. U.S. Court of Appeals ruled on Wednesday that the U.S. government may collect information about U.S. citizens without first obtaining a surveillance warrant, as long as it was done so inadvertently while legal monitoring a non-national abroad, according to Reuters. No. See, the funny thing is that's the assumption that this guy, I guess, is a troll. Says no power, no internet, no water. You'll give up pretty quick. We're raised in the woods down here. I don't know what you guys think. Here's the thing. A bunch of limp-wristed pansies are going to use someone else to come take our God-given rights to protect ourselves. Right. We can survive. My ancestors have been doing it for a very long time. We can survive without all that crap that you just mentioned in there. A lot of us are already waiting for it. We're prepared for it, so I just think it's funny. You guys are going to be slapping each other with a bunch of rubber dildos out in the street because you're going to take all the guns from everybody else. Simpletons. The appeal in question was brought by Agon, whatever his name is, a U.S. resident arrested in 2011, so later pleaded guilty to attempting to providing material support to a terrorist organization. Kind of like the liberals are. They're a domestic terrorist organization. He was arrested at JFK International Airport in New York as he was attempting to board a flight to Turkey. After communicating with non-American overseas, believed to be associated with a terrorist organization. Says this person here asked the Second Circuit Court of Appeals in New York to toss out the charges after claiming the National Security Agency, or the NSA, had illegally surveilled him without a warrant, a practice known as unmasking. The incidental collection of Americans' communications by NSA electromagnetic dragnet that explicitly targets people abroad without U.S. ties was permissible under the U.S. Constitution, the court ruled. It also said, however, that examining the content of database of stored NSA information could violate the Constitution's Fourth Amendment protections against unreasonable search and seizures. The court said the vast majority of evidence prosecutors had used against this person here, I'm not going to try to pronounce that, was, quote, lawfully collected by prosecutors, did not provide information to the trial court about whether investigators had queried NSA database. Brought to light by whistleblower Edward Snowden, the NSA's surveillance program known as PRISM gathers data from tech and telecom companies governed by Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, or FISA, which does not require individual warrants. We are drafted by the court's remand to resolve a critical factual and constitutional question in this case, as well as its recognition of the important constitutional issues that FISA Section 702 raises for everyone. We look forward to the next stage of the litigation, his lawyer Joshua Draddle said in a statement. Following his guilty plea, he asked the appeals court to consider whether the evidence gathered against him was lawfully collected admissible under the Fourth Amendment, a question the ACLU felt compelled to weigh in on. While we disagree with the court's ruling that the NSA can collect Americans' international communications without a warrant, the court rightfully finds the Fourth Amendment applies when the government searches for that sensitive information and intelligence databases, wrote ACLU lawyer Patrick Toomey, who filed a brief in the case. You'll run out of the woods pretty quick when we set them on fire. I guess you don't have anything better to do. So, yeah, I'm not even gonna say anything to that. Yeah, you'll see. Just being a dummy. China expects its artificial sun to be operational in 2020. In March, Chinese researchers predicted that nation's HL-2M Tomahawk, a device designed to replicate nuclear fusion, the same reaction was powers the sun, would be built before the end of 2019. No word yet on whether that's still the case, but in November, Don Zuru, one of the scientists working on the artificial sun, did provide an update saying the construction was going smoothly and that the device should be operational in 2020, a milestone that experts now tell Newsweek could finally make nuclear fusion a viable energy option on Earth. A scientist can figure out how to harness the power produced by nuclear fusion. It could provide a limitless source of energy. For decades, that's made fusion power a holy grail for energy researchers, but the problem is that they are yet to figure out the cost-effective way to keep extremely hot plasma confined and stable long enough for fusion to take place. China's HL-2M Tomahawk might be the device that's finally up to that challenge, or at least yields the clues needed to overcome it. HL-2M will provide researchers with valuable data on the compatibility of high-performance fusion plasmas with approaches to more effectively handle the heat and particles exhausted from the core of the device, fusion physicist James Harrison, who isn't involved in the project, told Newsweek. This is one of the biggest issues facing the deployment of commercial fusion reactor, he continued. And the result from HL-2M was a part of the International Fusion Research Company, will influence the design of these two reactors. I think it's funny, people that don't have anything better to do like to troll things and make asinine remarks like that. He's probably sitting home in his mother's basement or something. eating cheese puffs and is probably 400 pounds overweight and can't run down the driveway to get the mail. So, moon surface could electrocute astronauts, scientists warn. This I thought was very interesting. It's just weird once I start reading this. It's just it's strange. It says the moon's lack of atmosphere and magnetic field means particles from the sun go straight to the lunar surface. That gives the moon's surface an electric charge and means future astronauts run the risk of being zapped when they visit the moon, according to the University of Southern California plasma physicist Joseph Wing's research. Wing's team found that the electrically charged lunar surface raises concerns on possible charging or arcing risk for astronauts on lunar surface, according to the abstract of his team's paper, which it presented at last year's meeting of the American Geophysical Union in San Francisco. It's not unlike the experience of the moon, walking across the carpet wearing socks and then feeling a zap when you touch a metal doorknob, except without an atmosphere. You wouldn't even need to make contact with the doorknob on the moon. Cautiously optimistic. So why haven't astronauts been zapped just yet? That's because the areas they visited during the past missions were bathed in direct sunlight, according to Wang. And the photons from the light helped balance out the surface's otherwise negative charge, making shocks far less likely. Future missions, however, will see astronauts visiting the moon's south pole, which gets far less sunlight. Jim Rice, a senior scientist at Planetary Science Institute in Arizona, told Gizmo he doesn't think electrocution should be an actual concern for those astronauts. Oh, I'm so scared. He said, "You've been identified as an enemy of the state." Wow. I'm so scared. It says, but he also didn't rule out issues with larger future operations, such as ones that might involve bulldozing large amounts of charged materials around the moon. So like I said, if you want to read any of these articles, they're in the links are in the description below. If Jar Jar Binks wants to call in, you can call in the number scrolling across the bottom of your screen there, 14086380968, and then enter the meeting ID 534-233-4758, and I'll give you a chance to say something on the internet. But that's all you guys do, is you're a bunch of keyboard warriors. You guys you won't get out and you won't do anything on your own. You probably sit at your mother's house and eat up all of her food and live in her basement. You probably don't work. You probably don't do anything productive in life, but sit on the internet and troll people all day long, like other sad, pathetic people do in this world. It's absolutely ridiculous. Atmospheric river, tropical downpours, and unseasonably warm weather to kick off holiday week. So, Jar Jar Binks, if you would like to call in, the number scrolling across the bottom of the screen there. If you can read, obviously you can type. So if you can read, call in. Unless you want to, use your Twitter fingers to type bullcrap messages in my comments over there. Call and say something. Wild weather will bear down on the holiday season with a soaking atmospheric river for the west. You're Canadian. That explains it all then. Wild weather will bear down on the holiday season with a soaking atmospheric river for the west, drenching tropical downpours for the south, and soaring temperatures in the east. For most, dreams of the White Christmas will remain just that. The Pacific Ocean is open for business as a powerful Pacific jet stream will flood the U.S. with balmy air as well as some extreme weather over the next week. That includes pseudo-subtropical storm in the Gulf of Mexico and up to a foot of rain for some in the Pacific Northwest. Starting Thursday and lasting through Sunday, the Pacific Northwest will be bombarded by what is called an atmospheric river. An AR is a fast-moving narrow ribbon of water vapor over the Pacific Ocean that transports moisture at up to 15 times the rate of average moisture flow at the mouth of the Mississippi River. While the term has been around for some time, a team of scientists from Scripps Institution Center for Western Weather and Water Extremes made it official this year by devising an atmospheric river scale. Like the Saffir-Simpson hurricane scale, the atmospheric river scale measures the intensity of events from Category 1 to Category 5, 5 being exceptional. This upcoming event weighs as an AR3 for many, but as high as an AR4 for parts of Oregon, rating strong to extreme. Dr. Anna M. Wilson, a field research manager at the center, explained that the most important factors in determining the strength of the AR are the amount of moisture, the speed of the winds throughout the vertical column of air, as well as duration of the event. This time around, the 3-day duration is the significant factor for most. However, is a firehouse embedded inside the river which is stationary for long enough may inundate a narrow corridor with dangerously rapid rain rates. As the rain is coming at a good time, Oregon and Washington really need it. The past 2 months have been unusually dry, with some areas picking up only 1/4 of normal rainfall. This event promises to dump a month's worth of rain, a widespread 4 to 8 inches, from Northern California to Washington in just a few days. While this storm is a fairly warm system, as the river moisture collides with a colder terrain, whiteout snows will pummel the mountains. And the snow forecast for Stevens Pass, Washington, is 4 feet, with Mount Baker getting buried under 5 feet. Category 4 atmospheric river conditions are defined as mostly hazardous but also beneficial. So while the rain and snow are welcome news, it's coming too hard and too fast. Flood watches are out for 10 million people, including the Seattle and Portland areas, with various rivers expected to crest near or above flood stage. Depending on the intensity of the event, this type of flooding can have real consequences. An atmospheric river study published just a few weeks ago found that flood damage increases exponentially for each escalation in AR category, equating to a 10-fold increase for each step up category. The study concludes ARs are the primary driver of flood damage in the western U.S., accounting for an astonishing 95% of all insured flood losses in Northern California and the Pacific Northwest. From 1978 to 2017, estimated flood damage in 11 western states amounted to $50.8 billion, and ARs accounted for 42.6 of that, or roughly $1.1 billion a year. Jar Jar Binks said, "Tell him to get a boat." I just think the guy's a troll, just being a jokester in the comments. Probably somebody I know, trying to get a rise out of me that knows how I am. The authors found there's already some indication that climate change is intensifying atmospheric rivers because of a warmer Pacific Ocean, and this is expected to get worse in the future. In a warmer climate, extreme ARs will become more intense as they become wetter, longer, and wider, making for more volatile precipitation patterns, the study said. A consequence of this fast Pacific jet stream pattern, a piece of upper-level energy will break off the fast flow, like an eddy, and meander into the Gulf of Mexico this weekend. While there, the storm will summon deep tropical moisture from the Caribbean. In many ways, the system will mimic a subtropical system, which is rare but does happen from time to time in December. While it's likely won't receive an official name, the impacts will be similar with drenching tropical downpours. I'm not going to read the entire thing, but you found me looking on news on the Virginia Civil War. I'm going to basically cover something that everybody that's over there is already covering. I read news that a lot of people ignore, so I'm going to get to that eventually. It says, fact, the deadliest aircraft ever carries no weapons. It could kill billions. It says, in a military that operates Raptor stealth fighters, A-10 tank busters, B-52 bombers, and Harrier jump jets, the U.S. Navy's placid-looking E-6 Mercury based on the 707 airliner seems particularly inoffensive, but don't be deceived by appearances. Though the Mercury doesn't carry any weapons of its own, it may be, in a sense, the deadliest aircraft operated by the Pentagon, as its job is to command the launch of land-based and sea-based nuclear ballistic missiles. Of course, the U.S. military has a ground-based strategic global operations center in Nebraska and a land-based transmitters for communicating with nuclear triad. However, the E-6's sinister purpose is to maintain the communications link between the National Command Authority, starting with the President and Secretary of Defense, and U.S. nuclear forces, even if ground-based command centers are destroyed by an enemy first strike. In other words, you can chop off the head of the U.S. nuclear forces, but the body will keep on coming at you, thanks to these doomsday planes. E-6 basic mission is known to take charge and move out TACAMO. Prior to the development of the E-6, the TACAMO mission was undertaken by land-based transmitter and later EC-130G and Q Hercules aircraft, which had very low frequency radios for communication with Navy submarines. Increasingly, France also operated its own TACAMO aircraft in 2001, 4 modified Transall C-160H Astari transports, which maintained VLF communications with French ballistic missile submarines. The first of 16 E-6 entered service between 1989 and 1922, and these were the last built in a very long line of military variants of the vulnerable Boeing 707 airliner, and particularly the 707-320B Advanced, also used in the E-3 Sentry. Bristling with 31 communication antennas, the E-6As were originally tasked solely with communicating with submerged Navy submarines, retrofitted with more fuel-efficient CFM56 turbojets and benefiting from expanded fuel tanks. The E-6A could remain in the air for up to 15 hours or 72 with in-flight refueling. To use this very low-frequency radios, an E-6 has to fly in continuous orbit at high altitude with its fuselage and tail-mounted VLF radios trailing 1 and 5 mile long wire antennas at a near vertical altitude. VLF signals can be received by Ohio-class nuclear ballistic missile submarines hiding deep underwater, thousands of miles away. However, the VLF transmitter's limited bandwidth means they can only send raw data around 35 alphanumeric characters per second, making them a lot slower than even the old 14K internet modems of the 1990s. Still, it's enough to transmit emergency action messages, instructing the ballistic missile subs to execute one of a diverse menu of pre-planned nuclear attacks ranging from limited to full-scale nuclear strikes. The E-6 systems are also hardened to survive the electromagnetic pulse from the nuclear weapons detonating below. Between 1997 and 2006, the Pentagon's upgraded the entire E-6A fleet to dual-role E-6B, which expanded the Mercury's capabilities by allowing it to serve as an airborne nuclear command post with its own battle staff area for the job. In this role, it serves as a backup for 4 huge E-4 command post aircraft based on the 747 jumbo jet. The E-6B has ultra-high frequency radios and its airborne launch control system that enable it to remotely launch land-based ballistic missiles from the underground silos, a task formerly assigned to U.S. Air Force EC-135 Looking Glass aircraft, yet another 707 variant. The E-6 crews was expanded from 14 to 22 for the command post mission, usually including onboard admiral or general. Additional UF radios give the E-6B access to survivable Milstar satellite communications network, while the cockpit is upgraded up with new avionics and instruments from the 737NG airliner. The E-6B can be distinguished in photos by its additional wing-mounted pods. Mercury's abundant communications gears allow it to perform non-nuclear command, control, and communications operations as well. For this reason, E-6s have at times been deployed to Europe and the Middle East to serve as flying C-3 hubs. For example, VQ-4 was deployed in Qatar for 3 years from 2006 to 2009, where it relayed information such as IED blast reports and medical evacuation requests from U.S. troops in Iraq who were out of contact with their headquarters. 2 Navy Fleet Air Renaissance squadrons currently operate the E-6 VQ-3 Ironman and a VQ-4 Shadows, both under the Navy Strategic Communications Wing 1. These have their home at Tinker Air Force Base in Oklahoma. I built some airplane hangars there, but also routinely forward deploy out of Travis Air Force Base in California and Paddocks River Naval Air Station in Maryland. At least one E-6 is kept airborne at all times. E-6s on the submarine communication mission often fly in circles over the ocean at the lowest possible speed for as long as 10 hours at a time, and those performing the nuclear command post mission typically remain on alert near a Foot Air Force Base in Nebraska. The E-6 nuclear mission has also made its operations occasional fodder for conspiracy theorists and foreign propaganda outlets. There's just a little bit left to this, but you get the gist of it. All links are in the description below as well. Jar Jar Binks said, Eddie Bravo said nuclear weapons don't exist, I believe in. Who knows? I'm sure one day we'll all find out. Air Force General says U.S. ready to respond to North Korean Christmas gift, possible long-range missile launch. We may find out this week, Jar Jar Binks. Or next week, I guess. The United States has ramped up aerial renaissance efforts around North Korea in anticipation of a year-end deadline to come to terms on denuclearization or face a North Korean Christmas gift. U.S. military officials have considered the Christmas gift comments made by North Korean diplomat Ri Tae-song as a threat of new nuclear and ballistic missile tests if the U.S. does not meet its conditions for nuclear negotiations. According to the Drive, U.S. Air Force General Charles Brown, the head of Pacific Air Force PACAF, isn't yet sure what the quote gift will be, but the U.S. is ready to respond. I would expect is some type of long-range ballistic missile would be the gift, Brown told reporters on Tuesday. It's just a matter of, does it come on Christmas Eve? Does it come on Christmas Day? Or does it come in after the New Year? I think there's also the possibility that the self-imposed moratorium may go away and nothing happens right away. He, Kim Jong-un, announces it, but then doesn't shoot, Brown continued. Our job is to backstop the diplomatic efforts, and if diplomatic efforts kind of fall apart, we got to be ready. Despite the holiday-themed threats, Brown and other military officials cannot be sure when exact the quote gift will be carried out, hence the added surveillance. Brown said there's a common pattern with North Korea's rhetoric, which precedes other activities that itself often precedes a missile launch. Several newly modified RC-135V rivet joint surveillance aircraft have been spotted flying near North Korea and along the demilitarized zone between North Korea and South Korea. The aircraft are among the most advanced in the U.S. Air Force fleet and can reportedly gather a variety of signals intelligence information, such as monitoring an opponent's communications. The rivets joints can also geolocate air defense radar and communication nodes to help determine the structure of an enemy's forces' electric communications and defenses, also known as electronic order of battle. Hey, what's up, Tim? That's my homie Tim Stark. Shout out to him. It says RC-135S Cobra Ball aircraft and at least one RQ-4B Global Hawk drone have also been spotted in the monitoring efforts over North Korea. U.S. Air Force RQ-4 Global Hawk AE-5415 on task over North Korean peninsula at 52,000 feet. If you want to look at this article, it's in the description. You can click on the link there and look at the picture. The surveillance isn't all the U.S. Air Force has at the ready. Brown recalled heightened tensions in 2017 between President Donald Trump and North Korea's Kim prior to the more recent rounds. Hang on just a second. Hang on just a second. Oh, thanks Jar Jar Binks for subscribing to the channel. So it says, prior to the more recent rounds of nuclear negotiations, Brown recalled a number of military exercises and shows of force that had prompted threats from Kim. There's a lot of stuff we did in 2017 that we can't dust off very quickly and be ready to use, Brown said. We are looking at all the things we've done in the past, all the complete options. Brown has reportedly included the use of B-1 and B-2 strategic bombers in his list of possible ways to respond to renewed North Korea aggression, and the apparent willingness to return to tension and hostility between North Korea and the U.S. follows reported breakdowns in negotiations in October. Trump has previously expressed confidence in Kim's willingness to negotiate a nuclear deal even after a prior round of negotiations in February ended early over reported disagreements on economic sanctions. Increased ballistic missile tests in recent months have led some foreign policy commentators to speculate Kim has already given up the peace talks. One high-level North Korean defector has even sent a letter to Trump warning that Kim never planned to give up nuclear weapons. You guys have anything you want to talk about, you're more than welcome to call. Driving right now, listening to me. Run on. CDC ties deadly listeria outbreak to hard-boiled eggs from Allmark Foods. So federal health, I mean, I talk about everything on here. So this is another one. I talked about the romaine lettuce. So if you have any of that garbage, you need to throw it out. I talked about the poison pork. I talked about all sorts of crap. So here's another food warning, and I'm sure this is like hard-boiled eggs that come in the packages that you can buy at like the grocery store, which I don't understand why you would want to eat those anyways. I wouldn't. That's like eating convenience store sushi. So federal health officials have issued a food safety alert regarding hard-boiled eggs from a Georgia processor believed to be tied to a multi-state outbreak of listeria that has killed one person and sickened 6 others. U.S. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention voiced concerns that hard-boiled eggs produced at Allmark Foods are contaminated with listeria that has sickened people in Florida, Maine, Pennsylvania, South Carolina, and Texas. One person in Texas died and 4 others were hospitalized as a result of the infection, the CDC reported. 3 of the infections from the outbreak strain of the pathogen occurred in 2017 and 4 others occurred this year, according to the agency. Epidemiologic and laboratory evidence indicates that bulk hard-boiled eggs from Allmark Foods are likely the source of this outbreak, according to the CDC. 3 of these people reported eating hard-boiled eggs in deli salads purchased from grocery stores and in salads eaten at restaurants. CDC probe is ongoing, with investigators collecting grocery and restaurant receipts from places where those infected reported eating hard-boiled eggs, the agency said. So if you have any of these hard-boiled eggs, or salads that have hard-boiled eggs in it, throw in the garbage along with your romaine lettuce. So I mentioned this yesterday, and I don't know if a lot of people are Jar Jar Binks said, I don't own a bunker, I'm dead for sure. I'm up on a mountain, so I'll probably be one of the first to get it. So I talked about this. I mentioned this yesterday, and I don't. It kind of. So if you don't know what the endocrine system is, I suggest you look it up. It's like this major glands. I think there's like 7 major glands that run through the entire body, including the pineal gland, pituitary gland, thyroid, and all the way down to your lower glands, reproductive organs, all that stuff. And you can take certain chemicals that disrupt these glands in your endocrine system, and one of those is being BPA. And people don't necessarily talk about this a lot, but even if you're drinking out of like a pop, like a soda can, I don't have a soda can here, but I have a red Dixie cup because we're in the South. But the majority of all plastic has BPA in it, which this article tells you what BPA. It's this word right here, bisphenol A, and it's pretty much in everything, all the plastic that we own, whether it's casing a laptop, a soda can has a plastic lining on the inside of it, the water bottles you buy that you go to the gym and you drink out of when you work out, all that stuff. So it's in everything. And this article goes into that. It says BPA is likely coursing through your body right now. Every day you are inadvertently consuming and absorbing trace amounts as it migrates from can and bottle linings into your food and drink, and from thermal paper receipts on your skin. Scientists have found BPA is more than 90% of Americans tested, yet whether exposure to such small amounts of the common chemical pose any real health hazard remains highly controversial. On one hand, of a deep rift of academics who are adamant about the adverse effects. On the other side are U.S. Food and Drug Administration scientists who declare there are no dangers. Only one side has any control over what actually makes its way to your body, which is going to be the FDA. I think it's funny, like, people that vape that don't want to smoke, well, that's bad for you, because people are quitting smoking, so it's taking money out of big tobacco's pockets, and then, so they demonize, people vaping, and then scientists discover, plastics in food, or plastics in the containers and stuff that we use, that's bad for you, and then the FDA comes out and says, oh no, it's fine for you. Pretty much feed you poison, and we just take it. But I'm not going to go all the way through this, but I would recommend reading on the endocrine system. An excellent source to look up anything on the endocrine system is a doctor out of Texas. His name is Dr. Group. It's where I learned a lot about the endocrine system. And you can go there and look up his information on his website, read about it, and then read about the different things that affect your endocrine system, and BPA being one of those things. I just thought I'd put that article. It came out a couple days ago. I mentioned it yesterday. I think this is the last article before the main article I'm going to get to about this. It says a 17-year-old girl was arrested after allegedly stealing a $2 million airplane and driving it into an airport building in California. It says a 17-year-old girl was arrested after police say she stole a private plane, drove it along a runway, then crashed it at a California airport. Security footage taken at Fresno Yosemite International Airport on Wednesday and broadcast by local news station ABC 30 shows the aircraft, a King Air 200 plane, veering across the runway, then hitting a building. Some people used to steal cars back in the day. Now kids are stealing airplanes. Airport spokeswoman Vicky Calderon told the Fresno Bee that the perpetrator jumped the airport fence, got into the plane, put on the pilot's headset, and started one of its 2 engines. The girl then drove the plane erratically around the runway before crashing it into a building, causing substantial damage, Calderon said. No passengers were on the plane and no injuries were reported. It says no passengers or commercial airlines were ever at risk of this incident, Calderon said. The motive is still under investigation. I think she was probably playing real-life GTA and got a little carried away. Says the motive is still under investigation, but there is no indication of any ties to domestic terrorism. This was a kid being stupid. The police were called and arrested the girl around 7:30 a.m., Calderon said. Officers found the girl disoriented and uncooperative. There's a picture of it there. You can see on your screen. Kind of looks like the building. He used to work at the aviation place in Kansas. So there's a picture right there for you. It says airport officials are none the wiser as to how the teen managed to get into the plane and start the engine. That's still under investigation, and we are not certain how she was able to accomplish those things, Airport Police Chief Drew Bessinger told ABC 30. There's a little snapshot from the security camera, and it looks... I don't even know how they know that that's a damaged plane. That's pretty pixelated on my computer here. It says the teen was booked in a Fresno County juvenile hall on suspicion of theft of an aircraft. Pretty insane. So I'm going to get into the next article here. It says thousands of cops, veterans, supporters pledged to join militia in Virginia to combat unconstitutional laws. So, according to our Constitution, under our Second Amendment, we have the right to keep and bear arms, and it was put in place for tyrannical situations such as these. I am a Second Amendment advocate. I've used and exercised the Second Amendment when a home invasion occurred in my house whenever I was younger. I live in a state where we have constitutional carry. We have a pro-Second Amendment governor, so we're very much pro-Second Amendment here. So I am with the people in Virginia and these veterans and the people that are backing this stuff. I think that they have every right to stand up for themselves, and they have every right to keep and bear arms as long as they're law-abiding citizens. I think it's ridiculous that certain people think that they, because they're in governmental powers, that they have the authority or the goal to go in and take a bunch of firearms from people who own them, whether it be for hunting, self-protection, whatever it may be. But this is what they did to anyone in any society, country, anywhere. Before they try to go for a large takeover, they go and disarm the population so they don't have a chance to fight back whenever the tyrants step in. And this seems to be where certain areas of this country are going. And like I said prior to this, Cory Booker came down here to Tulsa, Oklahoma, actually, and met with like one of the Democratic groups here. And they tried to get the vote overturned for our constitutional carry here, and it did not work. We won in a landslide. People here like, God, guns, and ganja. So we have all those here. And I don't think that anyone's going to have the balls to come down here and try to necessarily do anything about it without a fight. So I stand with the people of Virginia, most definitely. And I know a lot of people in Oklahoma are supporting you guys. We just hope that nobody gets hurt because of this. So it says thousands of cops, veteran supporters pledged to join the militia in Virginia to combat unconstitutional laws. So Monday morning, law enforcement today reported on how Tazewell County, Virginia is crafting a militia to defend the Constitution in the state. And within hours, we were flooded with thousands of emails from people across the state. Police officers, veterans, and patriotic Americans who said they are joining. And it's a movement that's gaining traction across the state. Wrote one man, "I'm a veteran, an ex-police officer, retired, and am behind your ideas 100%. Anything I can do, I would like to help." Another one said, "I live in Franklin County, which voted down being a sanctuary city, being the council is Democratic. A moonshine county giving up their guns is dumb. The South gave up their flag, their statues, and now they want to give, they want their guns." Sounds like, if you're reading this, I'm not going to say his name. Sounds like his Germany. Another person wrote, "They had already been rumblings locally about a militia being formed last month, and we started carefully and quietly assembling patriotic Americans who were prepared to defend freedom at all costs. In the past, those numbers have swelled, and we have a very strong military presence here. More veterans and both active and retired LE, which is law enforcement, than you can count. As of this evening, we're talking about thousands of people that have expressed an interest in being part of this movement. Here's the deal. Last week we reported how lawmakers over in Virginia were threatening to use the National Guard if members of local law enforcement refused to enforce laws passed in the state that they felt violated the Second Amendment. The ones around here already said it. If they try to do this around here, the law wouldn't enforce it. So, not going to happen. And the sheriff here also, I don't know if it's in here or not, he also said that he would deputize a whole bunch of citizens in case they try to do it also. So, they're standing their ground right now. So that's what sparked things in Tazewell County, which said it isn't going down without a fight. It says, on top of calling themselves a Second Amendment sanctuary county, they're also crafting a militia as well. The Virginia county has taken the movement that was swept across the state and added an element that is sure to trigger pro-gun grabbing politicians. Not to go into this, and which I don't like using the white screen because it's like bright in your face. And I have to zoom. Hang on a second. That is way too much. Hang on just a second. Just this past Tuesday, on December 10th, the Board of Supervisors of Tazewell County passed two different resolutions in light of controversy circling those who are pro-gun. The first resolution declared the county to be a Second Amendment sanctuary, and this is not at all surprising to see, as 76 out of 95 counties, 9 out of 38 independent cities and 13 towns have adopted Second Amendment sanctuary resolutions. The second item on the agenda was the proposition of establishing a militia in the county. When both of the resolutions passed, the crowd cheered loudly in support of the decisions. Also, the resolutions didn't exactly pass by a small margin. The votes were unanimous, with more than 200 citizens standing by in support. The motion of the creation of the militia had already succeeded in an unofficial way based on the results of a survey conducted earlier in the month by county officials. But Board Chairman Travis Hockworth said people have persisted to press for the district to declare itself a Second Amendment sanctuary. Hackworth went on to state that there were 3 attorneys on Board of Supervisors. Many of the other declarations made from other counties in Virginia were closely checked by 3 attorneys to ensure nothing important would be glossed over or left out. 2 of the biggest factors in resolutions such as these can be boiled down to funding and prosecution. The resolutions in Tazewell County would remove funding for any law enforcement department that would infringe residents' right to keep and bear arms. If the state wanted to combat the resolutions, they would deny the county funding in areas other than law enforcement, or perhaps attempt to evict public officials from their held offices. Those are rather valid fears, considering this week warnings from Northern and Congressman McEachin. County Administrator Eric Young reportedly considered that element, and that's why they opted for the militia aspect. Our position is Article 1, Section 13 of the Constitution of Virginia reserves the right to, quote, order militia to the localities, therefore counties, not the state, determine what types of arms may be carried in their territory and by whom. So, we are ordering the militia by making sure everyone can own a weapon. Thus, if anyone from the state tries to remove the sheriff from their elected office because they refuse to enforce unjust laws, those state officials will be faced with a lawful militia composed of citizens within the state. Here's a video here. It says Caroline County, Virginia Sheriff Tony Lippis comments on Second Amendment. I know the sheriff can start a militia if need be. So, let me pull this up here. I'll play this for you guys. As a matter of fact, let me zoom in more. not going to let me play it. Yeah, there.
When I started this job, I swore to protect the people. I took an oath, which then leads to the agenda of everyone here behind me. For those that might have misunderstood the word of a sanctuary, I don't like the word sanctuary. What we are is we support our U.S. Constitution. I took that oath. I swore to affirm to the Constitution. I will do that. Every good citizen in here has the right to bear arms. I've been doing this for so long, and it breaks my heart to hear how much money you have, and yet the men and women that are here 24/7, and they don't get treated better than that. So with that being said, I know that the board, I think I saw a resolution that says that we are pro-Second Amendment. I sure am. And I know the sheriff can start a militia if need be. So God bless each and every one of them that are out here.
Just a second. Okay. It says the county is taking their militia element very seriously as the new ordinance calls for concealed weapons training for any resident of the county that can lawfully own a gun. Another couple sent this message late Monday to my husband and I are diehard Second Amendment defenders, and if they want our guns, they will have to kill us to get them. But I guarantee that they will not come out of that battle unscathed. We are both disabled, but we would be ready and more than willing to fight side by side with all of our like-minded brothers and sisters. We are from West, by God, Virginia, and we tell everyone who cares to ask what we think about guns and the Second Amendment, that we were born with a gun in our hand and will probably die the same way. Guns don't kill people, at least not without a trigger person. It's usually by a deranged person or a gang member or a person in the act of a robbery or drug running, kidnapping, etc. And usually committed with an illegally purchased or non-registered weapon. The leftist dictator, communistic socialist idiots need to realize that if they take away legal gun owners' weapons who have been trained to properly handle a weapon, they might as well open the doors and announce to criminals to come get what they want, because the criminals will be the only ones to have a gun which was obtained from the black market. The county was also called for schools to adopt firearm safety training programs, considering the blue wave that hit the state along with Bloomberg pouring in millions towards the election. This is a massive win that shows gun owners aren't going to lie down. And as they're pushing to ramp up safety and training, officials within the state are trying to get rid of personal defense. And if not bad enough, that they are going after firearms, they are going after self-defense measures as well. An amendment to a current law in Virginia has some martial arts companies as well as some citizens concerned. Known as SB 64, the bill, according to self-defense company, would instantly transform all martial arts instructors into criminal felons. Dude, this is insanity. This is absolutely insane. So you're telling me anybody that trains to protect other people is a martial arts instructor because they're teaching self-defense, you're going to charge them with a felonious crime? That is the stupidest crap I've ever heard of. That is so dumb. You can tell it's morons that are writing these laws, these state bills. You can tell they absolutely have lost their minds. And by the way, this is the same person that runs this state that had the whole thing that he wanted to say about abortion and all that on the radio about the babies and crap. I mean, these people, I don't blame them, man. I'm glad they're standing up for themselves. It says, according to the SDC, the law would even criminalize a father teaching his own son how to use a hunting rifle. The law, which was initially passed in 1987, relates the following. A person is guilty of unlawful paramilitary activity punishable as a Class 5 felony if he 1. teaches or demonstrates to any other person the use, application, or making of any firearm, explosive, or incendiary device or technique capable of causing injury to death to persons knowing or having reasons to know or intending that such training will be employed for use in or in furtherance of a civil disorder. 2. Assembles with one or more persons who the purpose of training with, practicing with, or being instructed in the use of any firearm, explosive, incendiary device, or technique capable of causing injury or death to persons, intending to employ such training for use in or in the furtherance of a civil disorder. State Bill 64 adds the following language. Assembles with one or more persons with the intent of intimidating any persons or groups of persons by drilling, parading, or marching with any firearm, any explosive or incendiary device, or any components or combination thereof. According to the article in Natural News, the language of the bill as written is too wide open to interpretation, especially in a state that appears to be going hard left like Virginia. We recently published a couple of stories on new confiscation gun laws, that are being proposed in the Virginia legislature. It says, in fact, numerous counties in Virginia are elsewhere have vowed to become so-called Second Amendment sanctuaries. Thank you, California and other immigration law sanctuaries, for the idea, where any law that countered the Second Amendment would not be enforced. The fact this law is being amended at the same time when the confiscation gun laws are going to be put forth gives gun owners reason to be concerned. As always, laws like this will likely be adjudicated in court, as we are painfully aware that can be a crapshoot. It is inevitable that this new law will somehow be tested via a court case, and one can understand how people might be concerned. For example, the firearms addendum is somewhat vague. If a person has a license to carry and happens to be with one or two people and they are involved in a counter-protest to something like an Antifa or BLM rally, based on this law, the Antifa thugs or BLM participants could say something, or it could say that someone exercising their Second Amendment rights intimidated them, and that would result in getting arrested. Statute is ripe for abuse, are some being paranoid, perhaps. But in 2019, anything goes. All it takes is a social justice warrior wearing a robe, and you could easily see why some people are concerned. Last Thursday, lawmakers in Virginia threatened to deploy National Guard to enforce the strict gun legislation they're pushing for if law enforcement officials refuse to do it themselves. They said the law is the law. But apparently that's a double standard in Virginia. Actually, it's a double standard anywhere, because anything that anyone with the right mind says something, and we exercise those rights, these people get offended. But if they can do something similar to what we say, and we have to accept that fact, and if we don't, then we're the ones that are called all these inappropriate names for not agreeing with them. I don't understand it. It's the biggest double standard in ideology I've ever witnessed in my life. I mean, they're nothing but morons. I don't get it. So if I go do something, then they throw a hissy fit about it. But if they do the same exact identical thing, and then I have something to say about it, then I'm the one that's prejudiced against them because I don't agree with their ideology. And this is where we're at right now. It's a one-way road. They don't have to respect us, but they demand respect from us. So this is where we're at. So if you guys want to read any more of this, I'm going to continue to watch this because I think it's important to all of us. Because what happens there could have an effect on what happens in the rest of the country. It might not, but it could. But I guarantee, there will be people in other states that want to stand up for these people and also support them in their exercise of their Second Amendment and the protection of their God-given rights. So once again, thanks Jar Jar Binks for the subscription. Thanks to everybody that watched the video, Tim Stark. But as always, all the links are in the description below. Whenever I'm done with this, I'm going to edit this for the podcast, and then I'll upload it And then I'll also put the link to the podcast for this episode in the description below. And you guys can listen to it in podcast form if you want to do that. You can get it on iTunes, Anchor, Podcast Addict, Castbox, anywhere where podcasts are available. You can download or you can listen to the podcast. If you want to check out any of the social media stuff, all that stuff is in the About section of my channel. And I guess that's pretty much it for tonight. Like I said, if you like the video, go ahead and give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to the channel and you're viewing this for the first time, give it a subscription. Go ahead and subscribe to it. If you don't like it, then give it a thumbs down. But here in Oklahoma, we stand with you in Virginia. I'm proud of what you guys are doing. And, keep it up, man. That's all I can say. I'm going to continue to watch it. If you guys have any articles you want me to go over or read on here, then you can send those to kingsmanreport2019@gmail.com. And you can also call in live. I do this show Sunday through Friday at 7 p.m. and I go over all the current events, things that are changing in our our atmosphere around us and in our societies, everything. I pretty much try to cover everything that I can. I miss a lot of it. But I cover as much as I can. So until next time, I'm going to go ahead and sign off here. So until next time, you guys, God bless and shalom.
And I wish that I could build a time machine, 'cause time moves on, and now you're gone. Oh, if only I could build a time machine, I'd come and get you. I can't forget you. I miss you, I miss you, I miss you all the time. I wish that you were mine.
Thank you for listening to the Kingsman Report. Tune in weeknights at 7 p.m. on YouTube. Thank you all for listening.